guys, this is Mike with another MLS Updater, and today we're going to be turning our attentions to Minnesota United. With the side sitting in third in the Western Conference in MLS, and after a poor start to the season, have been one of the highest performing sides since the beginning of July. All of this comes around the same sort of time as when Adrian Heath's contract renewal was announced, to some mixed reactions from Minnesota United fans. And today I'm going to be speaking with Jeremy from Sota Soccer, so he can give us a bit more of an in-depth detail into what's happened up in Minnesota and how things have been going this season. Okay, so hi, I'm here with Jeremy. Jeremy, how are you doing?
I'm good, Michael. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, really good here. Thanks. And can you let everyone know a bit about why you're the person to speak to about Minnesota United?
Well, I don't know if I'm the person to speak to about Minnesota United, but I appreciate you saying that. That's a big ego boost for me. But so I run and manage a website, sotasoccer.com. It's basically devoted to covering soccer in and around Minnesota. So obviously, Minnesota United is one of the big teams that we cover, our main beat there. But one of the things we also try to do is we try to cover other teams, leagues, players, coaches that are under that Minnesota soccer surface or Minnesota United surface, so to speak. So, we have a few local semi-professional teams. Obviously, we have Minnesota Aurora, who's made some news in the USLW League as well here. So trying to cover more than just Minnesota United, trying to make sure that we're giving kind of everybody in Minnesota soccer the coverage and spotlight they deserve. So, but obviously the Loons are a big part of that.
Yeah, definitely, and it must have been great having the All-Star event in the city as
Yep.
well. This last week has been must be great for the city as a whole, just to get soccer as get more people involved, I guess, and more people out watching the games. Have you seen a bit of an uptick on that? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so the All-Star week was really cool, and we love Minnesota here in Minnesota. Minnesotans love Minnesota. We'll tell you all about how much we love Minnesota. But to see, everybody from the outside coming in, from the national media, other owners, supporters coming in, and them talking about how much they love their experience and how good Minnesota did as a host and all the events happening and everything like that. It was fun to see. And yeah, I mean, I think since that, having two guys in the All-Star game, and Emmanuel Reynoso and Dane St. Clair winning the All-Star game MVP, I think that only kind of ups the footprint that Minnesota United has, not only nationally, but here locally as well. And we've seen these last few home matches have been absolute, just almost party-like atmospheres at Allianz Field, just selling out, but also how loud and how into it the fans have been. It's definitely picked up a notch over these last few weeks. And obviously the run they're on has a big part to play in that. But I also think, to your point, the All-Star game does play a role in that as well.
Oh, that's great. And like you say, obviously it's great having all those fans in there. And this weekend they got to enjoy the second half probably more than the first half.
Yep.
It was a bit poor defending, but a very lucky finish for the Houston
Yep.
Dynamo to take the lead. But came back again strong in the second half and did quite well, and got the win, the necessary 3 points. How was watching the game for you this weekend and going through those emotions?
Yeah, this is not a match that I feel like even 3 months ago Minnesota United wins. Traditionally, these kind of matches, I don't know if it's a lack of confidence or lack of attacking quality to get the goals back, or maybe a combination of both, but they really haven't proven to sort of snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, if you will, in matches.
Yeah.
But Minnesota United has proved in this run over the last couple months that this team is kind of different than those teams of years past, or even the team that was underperforming in the early part of this season.
Yeah.
And one of those aspects that they have is, I think it's that confidence to know that even if it's the 79th or 80th minute and you're down a goal, you're going to find it. Amari is going to come up big. Fragapane is going to come up big. Reynoso is going to come up big. You have that attacking talent. And they're working so well together that they're going to find it, especially against the 13th place team like Houston, who they're going to make a mistake at some point. There's a reason why they're 13th in the table. They're gonna make a mistake. They're going to sort of break down at some point in the match. It's, can you take advantage of it? In years past, Minnesota United, especially last year, they were, I believe, second or third worst in the league in underperforming their XG, which proves that they didn't take their chances. They didn't take those opportunities that were presented to them. This year, at least in this specific match, they doubled their expected goals.
Yeah.
which shows you that they are taking advantage of those opportunities. So they were patient. They were poking, they were prodding, they were continuing to press, but they were also in a way also patient, just waiting for those opportunities to come and taking advantage of them when they did.
Yeah, there's and necessary 3 points towards that
Yep.
playoff race, which is quite close amongst in both conferences. Like you said, you were mentioning earlier the early part of the season underperforming, and let's have a little chat about Adrian Heath. Obviously, back in
Yep.
June, towards the end of June, it's the 23rd. Minnesota United put out this press release to say Adrian Heath has agreed a new contract through to the end of 2024. He'll continue as your only manager in MLS. Till then, and it was met with some mixed reviews. So just prior to his signing, it was one MLS win in 8. So it was the 11th in the Western Conference. Go through some stats of 15 games. It's 15 games, 5 wins, 3 draws, 7 defeats, only 16 goals, which was tied with the least with Sporting Kansas City once that came out, and only Chicago had scored less goals in MLS. So it wasn't the most it wasn't the most normal sort of time for this sort of announcement to be made, was it? And it was met with mixed reaction, to say the least.
Yeah, the timing wasn't great. I'll be the first to admit that. But the timing came from, it wasn't a strategic decision from Minnesota United's PR to put out the extension during the middle of this losing streak. But what it came down to is, so Heath had signed the extension in the offseason prior, but he wanted to wait on the announcement until his assistants had finalized their extensions, basically.
Okay.
And that timing just happened to work out to where we're in the middle of June. You're just lost to Union Omaha in the U.S. Open Cup. So yeah, though the timing could not have been worse for that. And Heath's relationship with the supporters has been it's been a little volatile. It's been a little up and down, over his tenure. But as you mentioned, it's sort of been ever since this announcement. That's sort of when it's kind of clicked for Minnesota, and they've begun to find their form. And you read off, how much they were struggling, beforehand. But ever since that extension, you're talking about 8 wins in the last 11 matches, I believe.
Yeah, 11
only
games.
A couple draws and a loss there. So it's been a different Minnesota United team over those last 2 months for sure.
Definitely, and like I say, we had the joint least goals prior to that. Now the third highest with 28 since that signing. Only Philadelphia and Austin have scored more than Minnesota since then, and only and 20 conceded. So there's more goals going in, but there seems to be a bit more attacking intent from Minnesota since that turnaround. What has changed? Because he's not exactly, the formation itself hasn't changed. It's a 4-2-3-1, and it's set out this. On paper, it's exactly the same, but there's been tweaks to how the team has obviously played. And one of the things I think a lot of people mentioning is maybe a little bit more pace has been added to that attack. Would you say since the beginning of the season, that's one of the key things that seems to have changed?
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt they've gotten quicker. But for me, it's been really the play of 2 guys that's really up the goal scoring output for this team specifically. That's striker Luis Amarilla and winger Franco Fragapane. If you looked at the stats, even when Minnesota United was at their worst, if you looked, June 19th, after blowing that late lead in Miami, which dropped them to, I think, 11th or 12th in the West at that point. If you looked at the individual stats, Emmanuel Reynoso was still near the top of the league in touches, chances created, duels won, a lot of these things. But there just was nobody there to take advantage of the chances that Reynoso was helping to create. There was nobody on the other end that was able to put the ball in the back of the net and sort of make all that work worth it, if you will. But Luis Amarilla has really risen from the dead. Yeah. I absolutely put this guy out in the middle of June saying, you know what, this probably wasn't the right fit, right time. He's just not performing. I don't think it's going to happen. And at some point he flipped the switch, and all of a sudden he scored 9 goals. 7 of them have come in the last 9 or 10 matches.
Yeah,
it's been a real significant turnaround for him. But also Franco Fragapane, their left winger, he's a guy that when he is on, I think his performance really most directly impacts how Minnesota United is going to perform. You talk about pace, and you talk about relentlessness, and you talk about especially if you look at the last 2 matches, second half goals that directly came from turnovers that Fragapane created in the final third.
Yeah.
That's what he does. He has a huge motor on him. He is able to really make life miserable for opposing back lines. And I think the play of those two guys, Amari and Fragapane, with them picking up their game, it gives Reynoso somebody to play off of. It gives him somebody where if he's creating the chance, there's going to be somebody there to put that chance away.
Yeah.
But it also takes the pressure off of him too. If you look at his own offensive output from goals scored, assists, those real, those main stats, those have really skyrocketed during this run as well. And it's because they have more guys in the attack who are dangerous, who opposing defenses have to key in on and pay attention to. When it's just Reynoso, and you can sort of leave everybody else, that really is not, it's not going to make Reynoso effective too, if he's the one guy that defenses are really focusing on. But you have Fragapane, you have Luis Amaria, you have Bangi Hlongwane on the right wing, who is, you talk about pace. He has really helped Minnesota United get down the pitch quicker as well. So yes, pace has a lot to do with it, but I think it's all those attacking pieces sort of coming together and taking the pressure off of Reynoso. That's been a huge contributor to this run.
Yeah, definitely. And he's Reynoso is obviously a key player for the club, and obviously a player with great ability. But he's been one, looking through the MLS stats, he's by far and away one of the players who carries the ball much more than other players throughout his successful dribbles. And I guess part of that was the fact that he's had to for a long period of that time. He's felt like, I've got to put the team on my back and go. But having these players all click into a bit more, a bit better form, a lot more confidence. I mean, like you say, Amaria, that overhead kick he attempted, he probably wouldn't have tried that. And,
no, he wouldn't have.
But there seems to be a lot of positivity, and possibly, I'm not sure, the midfield, the injuries that have happened there, and it may in that centre of midfield, and the chops and changes that's had to take place. I think, would you say, when like Robin Lodd's obviously come in there and players coming back, maybe for some of those attacking players, they've got a lot more confident in the midfield as the changes have had to be made, but it's taken them a game or two to go, okay, actually, no, we're comfortable with, they know their role now, and we can get back on with what we're doing, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, Robin Lod has been, you talk about crucial players. I mean, his ability to just slot in pretty much anywhere he's asked to play and perform effectively it's been something Minnesota United needed. As you mentioned, the central midfield had been riddled with injuries. Now they have everybody back. They also brought in Jonathan Gonzalez. So now they have more central midfielders than they need. So it's like this competition now in terms of who's gonna fill those two spots. But yeah, I think guys really slotting into their role. I think honestly, Lod being moved to the midfield has had a positive effect on the attack as well, because it's given Hlongwane the minutes and the time he needs to find his own potential too. It's tough to get into form when you're only called upon once a week for a 15-20 minute spurt, right? With Hlongwane being called upon and being sort of forced into this starting role and having the motor to play 90 plus minutes consistently, that has really, I think, been a huge contributor to his own success and his own sort of coming into form and finding his role with the team. So yeah, I think Lod's flexibility obviously plays a big role in, raising whatever position that he's needed to come in and fill in for the time being. But it's also played a big role directly, I think, in Hlongwane's, his own increased form as well.
Yeah, definitely. And have those minutes on the pitch, if things are working, it just improves the players' confidence as well as just their general output on the pitch, doesn't it? And like you say, having all these players back now, and things are looking very promising coming towards the end of the season for a playoff spot. And if you can try and get one of those sort of home field advantage spots towards the end of the season, what are we thinking around Minnesota? What's the ceiling for this side? Is there a lot of confidence building around this side with the players coming back in?
Yeah, there really is. I mean, I was just talking on the post-game podcast over the weekend. Like, this is your window now. They lost center back Mikael Dabasi early in the match, and they didn't really have much center back depth right now. So depending on the prognosis, and Heath said after the match it doesn't look good. They might need to bring somebody in. I was saying this is your window. If you're going to go all in on any year, I feel like this is the year to really. I mean, you're third in the West. LAFC has proven to be vulnerable a couple times over the last week with the losses to San Jose and Austin. Obviously, you're just coming off a home win over Austin last weekend. You can hang with anybody, I feel like, if you're Minnesota United, and you've proven you can hang with anybody. So this is sort of that window. It's weird. 2 months ago, we were talking about, oh man, maybe we punt this season and we sort of focus on the future and start playing the kids and blah 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 blah. But now it's really, well, this could be the year.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think how much 2 months can how much things can change in
Oh,
those 2 months. But yeah, I think the sky's the limit. And with those head-to-head wins and the run of form that they're on, and they're finally proven to have the consistency to put together a number of results over a longer period of time, which they haven't proven to do in the past. They've usually had these spurts of good form that have helped propel them to playoff runs. But it's been very roller coaster over these last 2 years, topsy-turvy. They'd get a couple wins and then they lose 3 in a row. But then
Yeah.
they'd get 8 points in 3 matches, and then they'd get 2 points in 6 matches. It'd be this huge roller coaster. But now you're seeing this consistency where they feel like they can compete with any team, and they've proven they can compete with and beat any team in this league. I mean, their record against LAFC head-to-head is actually really good over the last 4 or 5 years. So they've proven they can hang with anybody, and that's not just lip service. They have shown that on the field.
Yeah.
So I think this is the year where they can do something. And so when you're talking about filling a center back slot in late August, if you're not in this position, maybe you punt it till the end of the season. You might bring in a younger piece who's right for the future. But John Brooks has been the first name that people have gone to, former U.S. men's national team player. He's sort of on the back end, obviously. But when you're talking about just needing 2 months from a guy who's proven at times to be one of the best American-born defenders, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about, Minnesota being in this window of, potentially getting some silverware this season and having a good chance to do so. So that'll be interesting to see how they fill that center back slot. But I think that's indicative of how people are feeling about this team and their chances this season, that they can potentially, go all the way.
Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully for your guys' sake, then that can happen. And bringing in a bigger name centre back to help plug that will be but it sounds very, very necessary. I think looking at the other sides, LAFC, like you say, have been a bit on and off in different areas of the pitch at times. Austin FC, we know their defense can at times be a weakness for them. Is that what we're seeing with Minnesota? You think this centre back position is, because of injury, especially now, that's our only real weakness? Or is there other things that you think Adrian Heath's going to be working on, and we need to get this right for the playoffs?
Well, this isn't necessary. So yeah, center back is the one vulnerability right now because of the injury to Dabasi. But even it's shown to be a vulnerability at times this season. Both Dabasi and Michael Boxall are kind of both on the back end of their careers.
Yeah.
They're not entering retirement tomorrow by any means, but they're on the back end of their careers. And I have talked long this season about how I thought during the transfer window, Minnesota should try to bring in at least one younger center back who can sort of fill in that role and be more of a short and long-term impact player. But they didn't do that. And I think they are kind of reaping the non-rewards of that right now, if you will, with this injury. But in this other thing, it's not a vulnerability, but you brought in 3 new guys in Alan Benitez, Mender Garcia, and Jonathan Gonzalez in this transfer window. To me, you got to figure out the role that they're going to play come October 9th.
Yeah.
If you get to the playoffs and you're not sure, maybe Garcia comes off the bench, maybe he can start, maybe Gonzalez, we don't know how many minutes he's going to get. Maybe it's going to be Benitez, maybe it's going to be Taylor on the right wing, right back. We don't really know. Like, you need to. It's a good problem to have, but it's also something you need to figure out, where you need to know the roles that these guys are going to play in this playoff run. Because, like I said, you're in your window now. Well, Mender Garcia is a young DP, and he's presumably going to be with this team for a long time moving forward. Hopefully that's the case.
Yeah.
You got to figure out where he fits in October, where he fits in the playoff picture. Does he start? Does he come off the bench? Is Jonathan Gonzalez good enough to hold down the 6th spot in a starting role? Or is he somebody that's going to come off the bench? Who starts at right back? Those are questions that you have to answer. They're brought about because you have this plethora of options now, but you also have to figure out the roles that these guys are going to play in the playoff run. And I think that's going to be a big box for Heath and Co to check over this next month. because I feel like they're good enough pieces where you can experiment and still get the results you need to host a playoff match. But I think if you go up against a Dallas and RSL, an LAFC and Austin, and you don't know the rules that these guys are going to play, that could come back to bite you if you're playing a more, organized squad, if you will.
Yeah. And should hopefully, if things all go well and you reach the MLS Cup, is obviously Philly are performing incredibly well in the East. But you looking at comparing the two conferences, are you quietly confident about how you go up against anyone in the East? Should you get there?
Yeah, I think they've proven it too. Last year, this Minnesota team wasn't nearly as good as they are this year, and I would say at full strength last year, Philly might have been better than they are this year, with winning the Supporters Shield and everything, and or with being being the only team within New England stratosphere, I should say, for the Supporters Shield. But yeah. And Minnesota beat Philly head to head last year, in their one meeting. So I think that gives you some confidence that you can go up against this Philadelphia team. They opened the season at Philadelphia this season and performed actually really well. They ended up getting a draw, but it was I think a positive start to the season, if you will, for Minnesota. So I think they've proven they can compete with anybody. They beat Red Bulls on the road this season, albeit it took a monumental effort from Dane St. Clair to keep the clean sheet, but they did that. And they've proven in years past they can beat LAFC. They just proved they can beat Austin. So you have two huge matches coming up. You have RSL midweek here and Dallas coming up on the weekend. So those are 4 and 5, I believe, in the table right now. Minnesota, you're third. So it's just another opportunity to build more confidence and obviously, but more importantly, I think create that buffer from that home playoff line too, because I think that's where you got to see your basement goal right now. If you're Minnesota, is to host a playoff match. Yeah. Everything else after that, we'll see how it works out. But it's just another opportunity to build that confidence and continue to prove that you can compete with anybody. And I think that also goes to the Eastern Conference as well.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, like you say, being just above that little gap of that group of about 7 or 8 sides almost going for 2 or 3 spots. So in each week, the team's written off and they're not going to make it. And then next week they're back in. And yeah, it's like you say, big games against RSL and Dallas, and some points there and some wins there just makes things a lot more comfortable come the rest of the season and going into play.
Absolutely. For sure.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much. Really appreciate you giving us some time to really get an idea of what's been going on in Minnesota. And you feel confident in Adrian Heath going forward for these next sort of season and 2 seasons?
It's a performance-based industry, right? You're only judged by the performance that you've put out, and it's hard to deny what this Minnesota team has done over the last 2 months. And I think not many Minnesota United supporters are quick to give Heath credit when things go well, but they are very quick to criticize him when things go wrong. But I think that's also the life of a manager in MLS. I'd say I think much of this run over the last 2 months has had to do with some of the tactical things that Heath has implemented. Their high press has been super effective, specifically over these last couple matches. Obviously, that's a Heath move. And I think he's been able to navigate, put the right pieces in place, moving Robin Lod to the 8, has been a huge difference maker for this team. And he's the one making that decision, obviously. And he also plays a role in the front office too. So any of these guys that they bring in, you have to give Heath credit for those if they work out too. So yeah, I think my confidence in Heath is strictly based off the performance of the team, and the performance of the team has been good. So my confidence is high on Heath right now. If they really falter over this next month and don't end up hosting a playoff match, then that might change. Yeah. But I think you can't argue the run that this team has been on and sort of Heath's role in that run as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks again, Jeremy. And can you just remind everyone where we can find you on social media and for all information Minnesota soccer?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jeremy G Rushing. You can also follow Soda Soccer on Twitter at Soda SOC. If you want to learn more about our coverage and what we have going on, just head to Soda Soccer, SOTAsoccer.com to catch it all there. You'll see Minnesota United, Minnesota Aurora, a lower league community soccer stories as well. So we really got you covered. So if you're interested in that, just head to sodasoccer.com.
Fantastic. Yeah, same for every soccer fan. Brilliant. Thanks very much again. I really appreciate it, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Appreciate it, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, buddy. Brilliant. Thanks very much again, Jeremy, for that, and some great insight into what's been going on with the Loons this season and going into this postseason. We'll have to see how well they can compete with some of the big sides in MLS, and they're very much in a position to be doing so, as we've found out. So please follow Jeremy and Sota Soccer for more information on everything soccer based in Minnesota, and please hit the subscribe button. Follow me at Mike Rice 1983 on Twitter, and we'll bring you some more information from around MLS soon. Brilliant. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers for that.